Hello and thank you for joining me. This time, as the title suggests, I wanted to speak about forgiveness and growth, because in forgiveness there is growth for both the forgiver and the forgiven. To begin, I thought of these two quotations: forgive and you will be forgiven, as we read in Luke chapter 6. And then also, Lord, how often must I forgive? Jesus answered, not 7, I tell you, but 70 times 7, from Matthew chapter 18. These two quotations pose quite a problem on a worldly basis, because it's not our normal way of reacting to things. The thing is that very often we think of anything done against us, any harm that we may have or any nastiness that we may receive from others, as being a malicious act done purely to cause us some sort of discomfort or difficulty, and we see that as being very wrong. And so forgiveness is very difficult for us to understand and to accept, because we don't see why we should just graciously let this person off whatever they should be coming to them for what they did. The truth is, though, that any harm that we may suffer, any nastiness or any act against us that we may suffer from another, is based not on just maliciousness, but it's actually the result of something inside of them that is hurting them or worrying them. It's some sort of lack that they have and that they know that they have, and they react out of that. You see, we all do that, and we can understand that this is true if we look for a moment at when we're in company where we feel loved and accepted. We really don't feel like being nasty to the people who are with us. And so it's clear that nastiness and aggression and other things come out of a shortcoming in the person who's perpetrating this act. The truth is, though, that of course we all do that. We all are guilty of treating people badly at times. And this is the case that Jesus was talking about when he was mentioning this, seeing the splinter in your brother's eye and not recognizing the plank in your own eye, as we read in Luke chapter 6, which is obviously a reference for this whole thing of forgiveness. We see a lot of these quotations come from that part of his gospel. Because I too have these difficulties, obviously, as we all do, that I react out of my shortcomings, my hurts, my lack of feeling loved sometimes. And it's interesting that if we can come to recognize this, forgiveness becomes a completely different thing from what we expected. Forgiveness becomes something not given as the high and mighty one who most graciously grants forgiveness. Forgiveness is granted on the basis of recognizing the weakness or the hurt in that other person and having empathy for them, because we realize that as we battle with some things in our lives, they too are battling with things in their lives. The truth is that if someone does something wrong towards me out of this feeling of inadequacy or this thing that is lacking in them, and I come down very heavily on them, I'm only likely to cause them to become more ingrained in that type of behavior and to decide that they're going to do it again and again. And even though they may pretend that they feel good about the outcome, of course they don't, because inside of them there is this gnawing thing that what they did and what we do is not right. We know that if we see someone treated completely unfairly, that we think more of the person who is treated unfairly than the one who treats them unfairly. And this shows us something very true about when we do something wrong against other people, that actually the one treated unfairly, the one who suffers whatever it is the one who's on the better side of the whole transaction than the one who perpetrates this. What we need to do is to begin to recognize in our own lives, our own weaknesses, our own shortcomings, the things that drive us to this type of behavior. And we can see how important this is, because actually recognizing what it is that causes us to behave like this is what can help us to overcome it. This is found also in things like Alcoholics Anonymous, that if one goes to try to join a group of Alcoholics Anonymous, that group knows that until that person is prepared to say in front of the group, I am whoever I am, and I'm an alcoholic, they cannot begin to help them to overcome their alcoholism. And so, for example, if we take a very simple type of what we would regard as a fairly common sin, if I lie to someone, unless I recognize that as a lie, and recognize that telling lies makes me a liar, I'm very unlikely to overcome that way of behaving. So what I need is recognition of my own shortcomings, because once I can recognize these shortcomings in me, I can be much more forgiving towards others who have the same shortcomings. One very useful tool for doing this are what are known as the examinations of consciousness, invented by St. Ignatius of Loyola. And what this entails is, at the end of your day, when you go to bed and before you go to sleep, revisiting the day that's passed and looking at the events that stand out during that day, the things that caused you joy and the things that caused you unease. And as you look at these and recognize your role in that event, you can come to see much more clearly what your way of behaving is like for others around you if you look at it honestly. And becoming more aware of how my behavior can be construed by others can make it much more likely that I can react in a much more positive way towards them and become a much better person to be around. As I say, if I go and attack people who have attacked me, I'm merely perpetrating that way of behaving. Whereas if I can reach out to them in love, that can change things for them and for me. And I can only reach out to them in love genuinely if I recognize that they're no better or worse than I am. They have their weaknesses and their foibles just as I have. And so there's no reason for me to look down on them because of what they do. That is where they are, and I am where I am, and we all have our things to work on. You see, our aim is to become like Christ, because we will see him as he really is, as John tells us in his first letter. This is why we're also told in Luke chapter 6, Jesus says, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you, because it's in doing good to them that we can help them to overcome these feelings inside of them that cause them to behave that way. It's in loving them, in reaching out to them in love rather than in anger, that we can help them to feel better about themselves and to change their way of behaving. Of course, if we do this, it means we're going to help them to grow. It means we're going to help them to become better people. And we ourselves, in learning to deal with those who do harm to us in this way, will grow and become more Christ-like. And obviously, this will reverse the pattern of ever-increasing harm and nastiness and so on in a situation, if we can start to change that into a situation of love. And this is certainly our calling as Christians, and we pray that God give us the strength to recognize our own weaknesses and thereby to make us capable of really forgiving others sincerely, not making ourselves feel good, but bringing love into the situation. And may God bless you.